Let us talk today on publicity of tenders. We know that tender means delicate, and tenders in the works are also highly delicate because they can change the meaning, if not prepared properly. And also, there are large number of complaints if the bidders is not getting chance to bid or even after opening of the tenders. Tenders, therefore, are very delicate and had to be handled with care by everyone at every stage because this may lead to problems to any person involved in its handling. We have already discussed that the stages of tenders may be preparation of tender documents, then publicity of tenders, receipt and opening of tenders, custody of tenders, scrutiny of tenders, acceptance of tenders, and rejection of tenders. And once tenders are accepted, they get converted into the contract. So today we will be talking on publicity of tenders. Main objective of publicity of tenders is to get competitive rates, and also if we give wide publicity, it means we are giving chance of bidding to all the eligible and prospective bidders. There are different modes of the publicity, and this may be in the form of notice boards, departmental offices, and sending notices or tender notices to other offices, then sending notices through contractors to contractor associations by registered post, speed post, or through their websites. Then newspapers, trade journals, departmental websites, other websites, and now central government says that all the tender notices should also be published on Central Procurement Portal, or what we call it CPP. Now, most of the tenders are published in newspapers, and that is a very important mode of publicity. And then nowadays it is website. Now, one important thing is the period of publicity, because we know that sufficient time is required for the period of publicity, and also the day on which the tenders are published and the last date of submission of tenders. Now we know that tenders may be invited on two bid system, that is technical bids and financial bids, and if both are received at one time, uh, quite often that is the mode which we adopt, or it may be single bid system, that is only financial bids are invited from the eligible bidders. Then we know that a contractor has to prepare the documents for their technical bids and then assess the rates of the items of the work. Hence, in two bid system, more time is required, and therefore more time should be given for publicity. In case there is a provision of pre-bid meeting, then there may be some clarifications and modifications or correspondence which are required to be issued after pre-bid meeting, and then sufficient time should be available for the contractor between pre-bid meeting minutes or the clarifications and between the submission of the tenders of the bids. Now there are guidelines from each organization regarding period of publicity based on estimated cost of work, and these are to be followed by the departmental officers. In case of pre-bid meeting, considerations should also be given on the date of issue of corrigendum or modification, and then last date of submission of tenders. Because after getting the clarification, the contractor may visit the site, then may collect the rates of the different items for which he is to quote, and then also he is to collect all the documents, so sufficient time should be given. And another important thing is that the corrigendum should always be given to all the modes of the publicity in which original press notice was published. That is important. Then let us talk about the communication to individual contractors. Sometimes press notice is sent to few selected prospective bidders. It may be objectionable by the other contractors, and many times, sometimes we also send the communication to the working contractors, and then other contractors may raise the objection once it has been sent to selected contractors. Therefore, it should be avoided. And then it is always better to send notice to the contractor associations registered with the department or organization rather than individual contractors. And then communication to as many modes as possible is always better, but that is costly. So a balanced view is to be taken based on the cost factor and also on the publicity, wide publicity. Now, e-tenders are invited, and as such, government tenders are to be available on CPP, and then departments may have their own designated websites where such tenders are uploaded or published. Then sometimes short tender form is, and always this short tender form is given. It is not the detailed conditions and detailed tender notice in the newspapers. So tender notice may have many conditions and provisions and becomes lengthy. Therefore, to economize the publicity cost, short form of tender notice is published in print media and details are made available on website. Short form of tender notice should include major information like name of work, estimated cost of work, earnest money, tender cost, type of bids, bid system, single bid or two bid system, last date of submission of bids, tender inviting authority, and website address on which details are available. Sometimes short notice also given, and then period of publicity is curtailed. So what we do that short-term notice is given due to urgency of work after curtailing required time of publicity as per departmental guidelines. Such practice should not be adopted as a routine, and the record should be kept for urgency why this short-term notice has been issued. The copies of the notices should be sent to all concerned, as mentioned earlier, like contractor association or other offices through faster mode of communication because time is short. So maybe that this may be sent through faster mode of communication like fax or like speed post and all those things. And please remember, in case single tender or no tender is received, this may lead to wastage of precious time. So even if short-term notice is given, we have to ensure that wide publicity is there. Then important is that publicity is to be given in well-read newspaper, well-circulated newspapers. That is important so that it has wide publicity. Advertisements in local newspapers not having wide circulation indicates malified intention sometimes for helping few, as such papers may not be read by prospective bidders. Publicity should be given well in time. Giving short-term publicity is not desirable, and sufficient time should be given to make available all the documents, site visit, and rate assessment. So if sufficient time should be given to publicity, so that more competitive rates are available, and prospective then bidders are also more and more bidders are participating in the tender process. In manual tenders, there were large complaints like submission of tenders is not being allowed. People, some few people are not allowing that tender should be submitted. Sometimes complaint were there that tender boxes are replaced. There are two tender boxes placed, one outside, one inside, and People say that tenders should be dropped in outside box, and that is replaced or not. Actually, that is not actual tender box. And then sometimes receipt of tenders was postponed at last moment, and then that was the complaints were there of nullified intention. Then tenders were not opened on due date and even replaced later on. And then while opening of tenders, there were complaints sometimes that new letters are attached by the tender opening authority, and then corrections, overwritings, insertions are not attested and change later. Rates change during scrutiny, and all those things. These such type of complaints were there, and therefore CBC and other audit authorities came. They were there for auditing, and ultimately now CBC has issued the guidelines that all the tenders should be published through websites and through CPP, and that is Central Procurement Portal, and also that guidelines are there that all tenders should be invited on e-mode. So these issues have been addressed largely through e-tendering. Well, thank you very much. I am KM Soni, AD retired. Thanks a lot.